My husband dumped me and married my sister for an inheritance, then begged me to take him back. All my life, I felt like I didn't belong in my family. The older I got, the more convinced I became that I was just unnecessary. My mother always paid more attention to my younger sister, Angela. It wasn't subtle. She didn't even try to hide it. Every day, I heard about how beautiful, smart, and wonderful Angela was. She was the golden child, the perfect one, the daughter who could do no wrong. And me, I was just there, a background character in my own life. The only person who ever truly made me feel seen was my father, George. He tried to support me whenever he could. He was quiet and gentle, always offering a kind word or a soft look when my mother was being particularly cruel, but even he couldn't stand up to her. My mother had a way of manipulating every situation. She always got what she wanted, and no one dared to challenge her, not even Dad. When it was time for me to go to college, I was excited. I had worked hard in school and had mostly A's with just a few B's. I dreamed of studying something meaningful, building a life for myself. But that dream quickly fell apart. My mother sat me down and told me bluntly, "We can't pay your tuition. College is too expensive, and frankly, it's unnecessary for someone like you." Then she added the words that still haunt me to this day. "You're stupid." Her words cut deep. I felt crushed, like all the air had been knocked out of me. I had believed, maybe foolishly, that my parents would support me, at least a little. But instead, I was told I wasn't worth the investment. So, with a heavy heart, I gave up on college and started working instead. I found a demanding full-time job and did my best to keep going, even while still living in my parents' house. It wasn't easy, but I didn't have a choice. Then came Angela's turn. She graduated high school, and without a second thought, my parents paid for her to attend a private college. A private college. I was devastated. I tried to hold it together, but I couldn't. I broke down and cried, not understanding why they treated us so differently. Why was I so disposable in their eyes? Angela didn't comfort me. She didn't even pretend to feel bad. Instead, she looked at me coldly and said, "You brought this on yourself. I've always been better than you. If you wanted to go to college, you should have studied harder." But that wasn't true. I had studied. I had the grades. I had done everything right, but none of it mattered. I realized then that it wasn't about hard work or intelligence. It was about favoritism. My parents, especially my mother, had decided long ago who mattered and who didn't, and I wasn't on the list. One evening, my mother came to me with a straight face and said, "I want you to pay for Angela's tuition too." I was stunned. "You're her older sister, and you work, so it's your duty. Besides, you never gave us any money or bought groceries." That night, I cried harder than I ever had before. My heart felt like it was breaking into 1,000 pieces. I didn't understand how my own family could treat me like this. Why was I expected to sacrifice everything for Angela when no one had ever done anything for me? Later that night, my father came into my room. His face was filled with sadness and guilt. He sat down on the edge of my bed and gently took my hand. "I'm so sorry," he said softly. "I tried to convince your mother that this is unfair to you, but you know her? Once she decides something, that's it." I nodded silently. I didn't blame him. He had always been kind to me, but he was powerless against her. That's when I made a firm decision. I couldn't stay there any longer. I needed to leave that toxic environment before it completely destroyed me. So I started saving money, little by little. It took time, but eventually I was able to move out. I found a small apartment, a tiny one-bedroom place with a leaky faucet and creaky floors. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And most importantly, it was far away from my mother, from Angela, from everything that had made me feel worthless. No one could guilt me into paying for Angela's tuition now. No one could call me stupid or undeserving in my own home. I didn't have much, but I had peace. And for the first time in my life, I finally felt free. After I moved out, I tried to build a new life for myself. My apartment was small and not in the best condition, but it was mine. I didn't have to live under my mother's control anymore, and that was all that mattered. From time to time, my father sent me a little money. It was never a lot, but it helped. Sometimes it meant I could buy proper groceries instead of living off instant noodles. Sometimes it meant I could put something aside for emergencies. But more than the money, it meant something else. It meant he cared. Then, suddenly, the money stopped coming. At first, I thought maybe something had happened with his bank, or he just forgot. I waited a few days, then a week. I started to worry. I called him, but he didn't answer. I called again the next day, and still nothing. That's when I received a message from my mother. Her message was cold and direct. "Your father sent you money without my permission. You don't deserve it because you didn't pay for your sister's education. I'll send you the statements of all the money you owe us." I was stunned. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of her words. A part of me had always known my mother was controlling, but this was another level. The next evening, a thick envelope arrived at my apartment. It was from my parents' address. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were dozens of pages, each filled with rows of numbers and detailed notes. She had listed every expense she believed I owed them: groceries from when I was a teenager, electricity and water bills, even things like shampoo and soap. Every tiny item was there, calculated down to the last cent. The total amount at the end of the document made my stomach turn. It was an impossible sum, something no ordinary person could repay easily. I couldn't believe the woman who was supposed to be my mother had done this. How could someone be so greedy? so heartless. That moment made something inside me click. My mother's control and manipulation had no end. I had always known she favored Angela. I had always known she didn't love me the same way. But this made it crystal clear. I was nothing more than a burden to her. I wasn't her daughter. I was a failed investment she expected a return on. Life went on, and eventually, things began to change for me. I met someone, Tom. He was kind, charming, and worked with me at the same company. We started dating, and over time, we fell in love. When he proposed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope, real hope. We moved in together, into a nicer apartment, and I didn't tell my family. I didn't want them involved in my life anymore. For the first time, I had peace. When we got married, I felt ready to put the past behind me completely. I wanted to cut ties with my family once and for all. But I knew I couldn't do it over the phone. I needed to face them. I asked Tom to come with me for support. He agreed. And I felt a bit more confident knowing I wouldn't be alone. The moment we walked into my parents' house, the air felt heavy. I hadn't been back in a long time, and the memories came rushing in all at once. The smell, the furniture, the tension, it all hit me like a wave. And then something strange happened. Tom saw Angela, and it was like I disappeared. His eyes followed her as she spoke, and he listened to every word she said with a smile. He complimented her on her beauty, her voice, even her laugh. I stood there, watching, a growing knot of discomfort forming in my stomach. I knew Angela had that effect on people. She always knew how to charm men, how to steal attention. Still, it hurt. But I hadn't come there for her. I turned to my mother, who was sitting on the couch with a smug expression on her face, like she had been waiting for this moment. "Mom, I need to talk to you," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked up at me, barely interested. "What is it, Kate? I got married," I said, standing tall. "I have a real family now. I don't want anything to do with you anymore." For a second, her face froze. Then her eyes narrowed. "You can't do this to us. Especially now," she snapped. "Why not?" I asked. I didn't raise my voice, but I didn't look away either. "Your father had a heart attack. He needs care. You've always been so selfish," she shouted. My heart dropped. "Dad had a heart attack? Why didn't you tell me?" She scoffed and crossed her arms. "It doesn't matter, but you have to take care of him now." Despite everything, I still cared about my father. I couldn't leave him alone like that. After that visit, I started seeing him almost every day. I brought groceries, helped around the house, and made sure he was okay. He looked tired, worn down in a way I had never seen before. As I spent more time there, I noticed how my mother and Angela treated him. They used his money freely, buying things without ever asking him. He would just sit there quietly, like he didn't have the strength to object. "Why don't you do something about this?" I asked him one day. He looked at me, his eyes sad and tired. "We both know it's useless," he said quietly. In that moment, I understood just how much he had given up. Not because he didn't care, but because he had been broken down by the same woman who tried to break me. I always believed that my father would get better. I held on to that hope for as long as I could. Every time I saw him, I told myself that he just needed more time, more care, more rest. But things didn't go that way. Over time, instead of improving, he only got worse. His health declined slowly at first, then more quickly. Eventually, he couldn't stay at home anymore. He needed full-time care, so we had to put him in a hospital. When we made that decision, I thought my mother would support it, at least financially. After all, it was his money too. But she refused. She said she wasn't going to spend a single cent on him. She turned her back on him, even though they had been married for decades. I couldn't understand it. She acted like he was just a burden. "Stop fussing over him," she would say, often in a cold, emotionless voice. "If he dies, we'll get the insurance money." I couldn't believe she could speak like that about her own husband. It hurt me deeply. I had always known that. My mother could be harsh, but this was different. This was something darker. Every time she said things like that, it felt like my heart was breaking all over again. Since no one else was willing to help, I paid for the hospital. It wasn't easy. I had to make sacrifices, but I did it because he was my father. He was kind, gentle, and the only one who had ever truly stood by me. When everyone else turned away, he never did. One afternoon, while I was driving to the hospital to visit him, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I hesitated for a moment, then picked up. "Hello?" I said, my voice slightly shaky. "Is this Kate?" a calm voice asked on the other end. "Yes, it is," I replied, my heart suddenly pounding. "I'm sorry to inform you," the voice said softly, "but your father has passed away." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I couldn't breathe. I quickly pulled over to the side of the road and just sat there, frozen. Tears filled my eyes and began falling fast. Soon I was crying uncontrollably. The pain was overwhelming. I felt like the ground beneath me had given way. My entire world had just shattered in a few words. I sat in my car for a long time, unable to move. My thoughts were a mess. I kept thinking about him, about all the moments we had shared, all the times he had been there for me. I thought about his smile, his voice, his quiet strength. He was gone. The one person I could always count on was gone. After a while, sadness turned into fear. I knew what was coming. My mother and sister never cared about him the way I did. They wouldn't mourn. They would only care about what he left behind. I could already imagine them going through his things, taking whatever they wanted, and leaving nothing for anyone else. His death wasn't just a loss, but it was the start of a battle to protect his memory, and to make sure that the little he had left for me wasn't taken away. 2 days later, my phone rang again, another unknown number. I felt a little nervous, not sure what to expect. "Hello?" I answered. "Is this Kate?" a voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" I responded. "This is Mr. Johnson, your father's lawyer," the voice said. "I'm in charge of his will. I have some important news for you." My heart skipped a beat. I held my breath. "What is it?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Your father left you $1.5 million, Mr. Johnson said plainly. I was stunned. "That's impossible," I replied quickly. "My father didn't have that kind of money. He opened an account when you were born," the lawyer explained. "He added to it regularly over the years. No one knew about it. He kept it secret to make sure it would be there for you." I shook my head, still in disbelief. "My mother and sister would have spent it a long time ago if they knew. It can't be true. They didn't know," Mr. Johnson said. "Your father made sure of that. But to access the funds, I'll need some documents from you, as well as some of your father's. Can you come to my office?" "I think so," I answered, still trying to wrap my mind around everything. After I hung up the phone, I just sat there again, and this time in silence. My father had done this for me. All these years he had quietly saved for me. He knew what kind of people were around us. He didn't say anything, didn't make a big show of it. He just made sure I'd be taken care of when he couldn't be there anymore. Tears came to my eyes again, but they were different now. Not from sadness, but from gratitude. I missed him terribly. But I also felt his love in that moment more than ever. He had left behind more than money. He had left behind a final act of protection, of care. That evening, Tom approached me. He had a curious look on his face. "Did you get anything from your father?" he asked gently, his eyes searching mine. I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I should tell him yet. Everything was still so raw, so recent. I didn't know who I could trust. But one thing I did know for sure. My father had loved me, and he had found a way to show it, even after he was gone. "No," I lied, keeping my voice steady. I wanted to see how Tom would react. His expression quickly changed into a sneer, as if he had been waiting for this moment. "I knew it," he said coldly. "You were never worthy of your family. I don't want to live with a poor woman anymore. Angela and I have been talking for a long time, so I want to divorce you." Then, without hesitation, he pulled out a folder and handed me a stack of papers. They were already signed, the divorce papers. For a few seconds, I stood there stunned. My heart beat fast, but not from pain. It was from something else, a strange mix of anger and, oddly, relief. I looked him in the eyes, then slowly picked up the pen that lay on the table. I signed the papers without saying a single word. I didn't need a man who was ready to walk away the moment life got hard. If he could leave so easily, he was never really mine to begin with. As he turned and walked away, I watched his back getting smaller with every step. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't even feel regret. Instead, I felt a strange sense of freedom, as though a heavy chain had finally been broken. I was done with people who didn't value me. My father had left me something precious: his love, his trust, and his legacy. With that, I would build a new future, one that didn't depend on anyone else. The very next day, I went to my parents' house. This time, I didn't go alone. I brought Mr. Johnson, my father's lawyer. When we arrived, my mother was standing at the door. She crossed her arms and frowned. "You have no business here," she said sharply. "Go away." But the moment she saw Mr. Johnson standing beside me in his suit, holding a briefcase, her expression changed. She stepped aside reluctantly and let us in. As soon as we stepped into the living room, Angela appeared. She looked angry, her arms flailing. "There's nothing here for you," she yelled. "Father left the house to us." I took a deep breath, staying calm. I had come prepared. "Father left me $1.5 million, I said clearly and calmly. There was a sudden silence in the room. Even Tom, who was standing nearby, turned pale. His mouth opened slightly in shock. "What?" my mother screamed, her voice rising. She waved a piece of paper in the air. "That's impossible. Here's his will. It says everything goes to us." She shoved the document into my hand. I glanced at it and felt my stomach turn. It was obviously fake. The handwriting was Angela's. I had seen it enough times to recognize it. It wasn't even close to my father's neat, careful script. Mr. Johnson took the document from me and looked at it closely. He narrowed his eyes, then gave a short nod. "This isn't your father's handwriting," he said calmly. "He left the original will with me. I have the only valid copy. I don't know what this is." Angela's face turned bright red. "This is his last will, and it's valid," she shouted, trying to sound confident, but her voice shook. Johnson didn't raise his voice. He stayed calm and firm. "Then you won't mind if I take it for verification? You understand that forging a will is a very serious crime. It's punishable by law." Suddenly, the room went completely silent. My mother looked at Angela, and Angela looked down at the floor. They both knew they had been caught. Their anger quickly turned to fear. Without saying another word, I began gathering the documents I had come for. They didn't try to stop me. They just stood there, frozen, not knowing what to do next. Just as I was about to walk out the door, Tom stepped forward. To my surprise, he dropped to his knees right in front of me. His eyes were filled with tears. "Forgive me, Kate," he said, his voice trembling. "I was wrong. I love you so much. Let's try again." I looked down at him. A part of me expected to feel something. Pity, sadness, anything. But there was nothing. I had given him everything I could, and he had thrown it all away for someone else. "I don't need any of you," I said quietly but firmly, "and I never want to see or hear from you again." "Kate, please," he begged, but I didn't stop. I walked right past him and out the door. I didn't look back. I had no intention of listening to him or anyone else who had hurt me. I was done with all of them. As I stepped outside, I took a deep breath. The air felt fresher, lighter. I felt free, truly free. I was ready to begin a new chapter in my life, one that I would write for myself. In the weeks that followed, I moved to a house by the ocean. It had always been my dream to live by the sea. The house was small, but it was perfect. It had large windows, white curtains, and a porch that looked out over the waves. I opened a small business nearby, something I had always wanted to do. It wasn't fancy, but it made me happy. Each morning, I woke up to the sound of the ocean, the soft crash of the waves, the seagulls calling in the distance. It brought me peace. I would sit on my porch with a cup of tea and watch the sun rise. For the first time in my life, I felt truly happy and safe. I never spoke to my family again. It was better that way. I didn't want them in my life, and I didn't miss them. They had made their choices, and so had I. From time to time, I heard things from people who knew them. Apparently, my mother and Angela spent all the money they could find from my father in just a few months. They didn't manage it well, and it disappeared quickly. Tom had to find another job just to survive. Angela had twins, and they all ended up living in my mother's house because they couldn't afford to rent a place of their own. Their life became chaotic. Every day was a struggle. Bills piled up. Fights became common. And the peace they thought they'd gain from pushing me aside never came. Sometimes I thought about all of it and how things had turned out. My mother and Angela had always treated me like I didn't matter. They saw me as weak, as someone they could ignore. But now, they were the ones facing hardship. I didn't feel sorry for them. In fact, I felt something else. Justice. Everyone had gotten exactly what they deserved.